Hi, this is Anna Imagination. Welcome to the Ethical Asshole. I am your host, the Salty Bitch. I'm going to be talking about educators. This is not going to be a pleasant conversation. I don't care. Types of information. There are three types of information anytime you transfer data from point A to point B. You are either gaining perspective, dissection, instruction. That's it. Perspective, dissection, instruction. I wrote it down before I came here because I was in the middle of a thought and I knew I was going to want to repeat this many, many times because this is the summation and the introduction to a whole thing I'm going to unleash here in a minute. And in order for you to understand that, you need to know the thesis of this video. Types of information are perspective, dissection, instruction. Anything else is absolutely up to the child, the student, to pursue. It is the pursuit of exploration. That is actually what dissection is the exploration part. Now, this means that there's two sides to this. There's going to be am I the explorer side or am I the delivery person? And this is really, really important. You are either the explorer or you are the delivery boy. So the teacher is the delivery boy, which means you should be providing perspective and instruction. The dissection exploration part is for the explorer. It's equivalent to you want to go climb Mount Everest. So you go to Mount Everest, and there is this massive bazaar all happening at the base of Mount Everest. Some would call it a tourist trap. But you have the ability to go into this region and literally go through the shops and buy all your supplies. Now, you are the student. So you are there to buy your supplies and then climb the mountain. The teacher is supposed to be the one giving you perspective and instruction and maybe even guide you, maybe along the journey. However, that's not what's taking place in our educational system. What's taking place in our educational system is you're not climbing Mount Everest. You're sitting at the base. You go into this little shop. Now, the first shop you go into, the person's very helpful. They walk in, they say, "Oh, welcome to the shop. I see that you're going to climb Mount Everest. You're going to need these tools." And they give you the tools. You get the supplies. They tell you which routes you're going to want to take. They make some recommendations and you leave. You are maybe there for 20 minutes. You do not need them to literally give you a video tour of Mount Everest because you're going to go climb Mount Everest. Now, the next shop you go into, this is a bad teacher. This is unfortunately what the majority of us expect. This is the person who comes in and says, "Oh, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to show you this." And you aren't given any tools to climb Mount Everest. You're not given any provisions and you're not given any instruction. You are sat down in front of a video tour, a 12-year tour of what it's like to climb Mount Everest without you ever stepping foot outside of their shop. After 12 years, you get out and you're like, "So that happened. Now I'm going to go climb Mount Everest." And you go to climb Mount Everest and you don't have any of the tools. You don't have any of the instructions. You have no idea what you're doing. All you have is a 12-year video with live theatrical presentation of an audiobook and a narrator giving you a tour of Mount Everest. Now, you're not going to do a good job. The other type is where you go in, you get the supplies, and they say, "We're going to teach you how to use the tools so you can go climb Mount Everest." One of these examples is the perspective provider, the delivery boy, which is what it should be, and the instruction manual. The second example, is what you get from teachers. And the third example is what you get from a trainer. So you're going to have a trainer, you're going to have a delivery boy, and then you're going to have a teacher. People have started to figure this out. Parents have started to realize, wow, teachers are useless. You've got your trainers, you've got your delivery boys, and then you've got your teachers. The teacher is obsolete. They don't work anymore. They never did work. People are wanting to know how to climb Mount Everest. They need a trainer. People want to know how to navigate life. They need a delivery boy who provides them with the instruction. Some people want the training, other people don't. So now you've got a choice. Do I just want the delivery or do I want the... So this is it. Do you want DIY training with a manual or do you want the actual trainer? That's really what this comes down to. I love the word trainer. I'm a trainer. That's what I am. I don't cheat. I can't stand that shit. I'm a delivery boy. I'm the, here's your DIY training. Here's your DIY manual. If you really want anything more than this, you can join my membership and then I'll give you training. But I'm not going to do the teaching shit. That's just, I write my books for that. That's it. As I write my books, and the books, you guys can just pick up the book and read. You don't need me to sit there and literally give you a slideshow of what it's like to live life. You go live life. And the idea that we are literally robbing our children of 20 years of their lives for this ego fest, I'm going to call it an ego fest because what else is it? It certainly isn't for the child. It's got to be for the teacher. So it's an ego fest. Now, your child is the explorer. And that's really what this comes down to. So you've got these three types of information: perspective, dissection, instruction, guide. Now, this is where I really want to sit down and talk about what a philosopher actually is and also how they differ from everything else that's out there. A philosopher is somebody who literally, their vocation is education. They are learners. That's all a philosopher does. They are literally a professional student. That's what we are. We are a professional learner. We are a professional educator. We are a professional student. This is all we do. So we are literally doing and applying the practice and the passion and the vocation of mastery level and on that the educator or the teacher is claiming to do, which is probably why I have such a huge hatred for teachers, is because I actually do education. I actually do the science of learning and growth and how it's applied to the mind and life. It's how to take an idea and transfer it over into the material plane. Oh, you guys probably really want to know how to do that, don't you? How do you take an idea and a dream and turn it into a reality? This is what you learn in philosophy. This is what I train you to do. This is what I'm here to deliver. And because I am a professional learner and a professional educator, that's what I've learned. So now I'm looking at a bunch of fakes and frauds like teachers, and I'm going, okay, you've got a slideshow for 12 years that you teach people for an ego fest. That's not teaching. You've got a lot of disabled people who are now leaving your classroom, and you've stolen 12 years of their life for your fucking ego and paycheck. That's dirty. That's like the worst salesman job in the world. And that's it, really, is the third-party salesman. And you get children walking out going, if a child graduates from high school and says, I don't know who I want to be, I don't know what I am, I don't know what I want to do with my life, you have failed as an educator. Like, the whole purpose of the educational system is so you could figure out what you want to do with your life. Now, let's set the philosopher over here. So this is my vocation. And the types of information are perspective, exploration, instruction, which means you are learning information to explore something and dissect it, or you're learning how to do something with instruction, or you're gaining a new perspective. Those are your only three options. The only reason why you have any data that comes into your brain, entertainment. Give me a minute. No, entertainment is about perspective. So every kind of information that comes into your beautiful brain is literally breaking it down into these three categories. By the way, this is logic and mathematics, and this is grouping. This is something you learn in philosophy and how to apply it. So that when you take something like knowledge or education or information or anything, you know, oh, it's going in this category. So when I present to you a thesis, hey, this is what we're going to talk about in this video, you need to know I am giving you perspective and I am giving you instruction. I am not going to be giving you exploration or dissection in any of my videos. On occasion, I do that. Oh, no, I do that a lot. I just have them in a different space. But really, I am more of a, here's your perspective, or here's a new perspective, and choose to put it in your own perspective, of course. And then I've got this instruction guide. Now, if you want to dissect any of my stuff, those are all in my books. That's 100% my books. Those are my courses. That's where all the dissection goes. So that's where I pull out my whiteboard on Zoom and I'm like walking you through the detail and the step-by-step process. That's the sequencing. That's literally the sequence, and that's dissection. You are either going reverse engineering to discover the sequence, or you are assembling it to put it back together to see what it is. Literally exactly like reverse engineering a radio, disassembly, and then assembly to put it back together to see how it works. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Not looking at a slideshow and getting a tour of what is to come once you're out of school at 18 and you can actually start doing stuff with your life. So the whole concept of stealing our children's youth from them so we can satisfy our ego it's got to end. It's going to end. Literally the days of teaching is numbered. Thank fucking God. Because the masters, the real masters, have figured this out and they're on YouTube. Hi. Providing all this information to the masses for free because we know what we're doing and we know the value of education and we know how bad it is out there. So, and I love this about YouTube because the world is filling up with a lot of masters who are actually practicing the vocation. And I wrote it just a few minutes ago. This is actually what inspired this whole thing, is this line. When you have masters on YouTube teaching their mastered craft to the entire world for free, why would we ever settle for less? Teachers are those who have deliberately removed themselves from the field of practice and are little more than fans and admirers of the discipline they never practice. Teachers could not possibly have the comprehension or the depth to instruct our children adequately, which is why the majority of our population is unhappy, poor, mentally ill, and without direction, fulfillment, or life satisfaction. This is the result of teachers, not masters, teaching your children. Parents and future generations are starting to figure this out. The days of teaching without a mastered vocation are numbered. Teachers of the future need to pursue the vocation they desire and model themselves after university professors and YouTube masters who juggle their vocation with their instruction. Because the days of teaching are numbered. And with school shootings on the rise, it's a no-brainer. Gee, do I want to homeschool my child safely without the threat of a school shooting while they get the best of the best teaching them on YouTube, Khan Academy, and Wikipedia? Or do I want to send them to a shooting corral where a bunch of vaunters try and talk about their fandom? Because that's really what you're talking about. It's a gossip fandom. So we are literally looking at the teacher becoming obsolete in a couple years. Really, we are, especially with declining attendance, probably from the school shootings. And the real holdback is money, time, lack of knowledge, specifically the parents. They don't have the time, they don't know how, and they don't have the money. For this reason, my homeschooling program is going to be free. So the money is going to be eliminated. Time, this one I love. My franchise is a homeschooling facility to teach parents how to homeschool and to provide your child with a place that they can go to get homeschooled safely. And it's literally based off of the entire philosophy we have here, while also getting provided with the best instruction we have. It is gorgeous. And that way, if you are in a position where you can't, this is available to you. So it's absolutely a beautiful alternative to a lot of the problems that we have today. And it's covering one of the things that we cover is the amount of the 7 disciplines that everybody is going, why aren't we learning this stuff in school? It's everything you should have learned in life and didn't. It's literally relevant education. So relevant education is absolutely huge with what I do. I'm a philosopher. I know it's relevant. After I finished and I went, let's go out there and talk to people and see what education they actually need and want. And that's where literally people kept giving me the same 7 answers. Everyone kept giving me the same 7 answers. They want to know how to do relationships, networking, social skills. They want to know how to do their finances. They want to know how to be happy. They want to know how to get a job, actually find a career that makes them happy. They want to know how to take their dreams and turn them into a reality. It was extraordinary to see what people were all talking about. And every single one of them said across the board, every one of them, no, my education was not adequate. And when I talked to teachers, they were delusioned to actually think that what they teach you, what they are teaching your children in school is relevant. They're convinced. They are really convinced we use it every day. They are convinced that we use the education they gave us in the first 20 years of our life every day. This is the teacher delusion. You've got delusional, egotistical fans teaching your children. Really, they are delusional, egotistical fans. And it's like, so that all being said, we're going to set that aside for a minute, maybe for a while, because as a parent, and this is really big, is you need to know how to do homeschooling. You need to know in what direction you're going to take this and where to get started. And this is where a lot of parents just don't have this knowledge. And they're like, what do I do? There's two sides to this. And this is where you need to understand the big picture. And this is what is missing from the educational system. There's the academic discipline, and then there's the package. The academic disciplines is what's inside of the package. No one knows about the package except philosophers. This is all we do, is we study the package. That's all we do, is study the package. The academic disciplines are what's inside of the package. And when you study the package, you understand what the academic disciplines do, what they're for, how they relate to a human being, the human being's relativity to the world and Mother Nature, and the child's relativity to other people. So you've got three things happening here in the world. This is what we learn in philosophy. This is what we learn in the packaging. You've got the self, that's you. You've got other people, that's me and everybody else here, 8 billion of us. And then you've got Mother Nature. Those are the only three people who are here. That's it. The world is made up of nature, you, the self, and others. That is our world. Now, the three entities, that is nature, self, everybody else, has to have a relationship. We interact with each other, whether you like it or not, guys. We're interacting with each other. It's going to happen. We're going to bump into each other. So as a result, you have got to figure out how to literally navigate your way through nature and others, while I am also learning how to navigate my way through nature and others. And this is literally life. It's how we interact and move with nature and others. The academic disciplines is the how-to guide. But you weren't taught it this way because you don't know, because they didn't know, because you had a bunch of vaunters teaching you, teaching your children. This is what happens when you have a bunch of noisy know-nothings deciding to teach. So the 18 disciplines are literally 18 languages. Now, I don't want to scare you, so let's break that word down from 18 to 6. There's really 6. There are 6 groupings. Now, you're very familiar with the third grouping. Everybody in the world is familiar with the third grouping. The third grouping is reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's the third grouping. So you got one down. You all know reading, writing, and arithmetic. But there are 6 groupings. The first grouping and the second grouping were completely thrown out the window, which is why the third grouping doesn't work. It's because the third grouping doesn't work without the first and the second. It's called sequence, which is what you learn with the packaging in philosophy. So you've got number 1, number 2, and number 3. But your genius educators, they decided you only needed number 3 because they don't understand how important sequence is to the sequence, which is really why they shouldn't be teaching you math, which is why 40% of you struggled with math. So you shouldn't start with 3. You should start with 1 because sequence happens. This 1 is the foundation of 2. That's how we get 2. And 2 is the foundation of 3. But they started you with 3. So you didn't have the foundation to 3. And then you have 4, which is the foundation, or which is the dependent of 3. And then you've got 5 and 6. Every one of these groups has 3 studies. And it's not really possible to study one of those studies in that group without falling into the others. They're going to kind of mold together. Likewise, it's really, really difficult to study a grouping and then not fall into the next one, because they're all literally interconnected in a sequence and dependent upon each other in the right order of operations. This is philosophy. This is logic. This is math. This is the package that you were not taught because your teachers did not study philosophy. The problem is teachers taught philosophers today. I learned my stuff from Plato directly. So it's called books. So as a result, you've got a bunch of teachers who aren't knowing this stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you why mine is so different, because you can read the same book, but you're not going to get the same information. I read Plato before teachers tampered with my brain. So I had the right logical sequence in my brain at a young enough age when I studied Plato to understand what Plato actually meant, because I had the sequence. But your sequence was disrupted before you read Plato, which meant you're going to understand it differently. When you have a comprehension sequence, it changes your perspective and how you process data. As a result, by the time we are 2 and 3 years old, somebody steps in and messes with your sequence. If you don't know about your sequence to protect it, you're not going to protect your sequence. And if you have somebody who comes in and messes with your sequence, it causes mental disorder. That is where all mental illness comes from, is your sequence being played around with out of order. So once you understand that you have the sequence, and the sequence is how you learn, it's the progression of learn, it's everything. Suddenly, how you understand and perceive the world is going to be changed. Now, most of us, 98% of us, had our sequence tampered with, which is why 98% of us aren't geniuses anymore, is because the educators decided to tamper with your sequence, and your parents decided to tamper with your sequence. So when you did finally get the information, maybe you did study Plato, you were studying Plato with a distampered sequence. It's going to change the meaning, which is why the majority of people think that Frankenstein takes place in a castle, because you learned it out of sequence, which is why a lot of people think that Frankenstein is a story about a man playing God, because you learned it out of sequence. You read or heard about the story of Frankenstein with an improper sequence. What it actually is about is a man who cannot let go of death. He cannot accept death. And it is about the relationship of a parent to its creation. That is what Frankenstein is actually about. But if you hadn't studied Frankenstein with a corrected sequence, you're not going to get that translation. You probably got the other one of man's playing God. That's not the correct sequence. So as a result, you misinterpreted the actual meaning of the book. The thing is, there's a very famous saying in the book of Frankenstein that's really, really like the core of the entire story, which a lot of people miss because they got the wrong sequence. And this core, this primary argument, is literally the face-off between the father, the parent, and the creation, the monster, which is never actually called a monster. It's called a creation. So it's the parent and the creation. A child's real name is creation. You created the child. A child just tells you its age, its maturity level. It doesn't actually tell you its relativity to the parent. It's a dependent. It's a creation. Child is the opposite of adult. It doesn't actually reflect on relativity. It doesn't at all reflect on relativity. So when you have a parent-creation relationship, it brings into the question of what is your responsibility to that creation? And this is what Frankenstein is actually about. But no one has the correct sequence to interpret it with that translation. Now, that's an example of this is what happens when you take a book like Frankenstein and you translate it with this sequence versus everybody else's sequence. Now you have comparison to make a relative comprehension of, oh, that's the difference. Everything you learned has this kind of a massive gap because you were given the wrong sequence. your educational system was created by people with that incorrect sequence, which was created by someone with the incorrect sequence, which was created by somebody with the incorrect sequence. And had you studied philosophy and integrational mathematics prior to 2 years old or with a proper sequence, you would know that. But because everyone studied off of the wrong sequence, no one's figuring that out. So now everyone's going, what's wrong with the world today? Hey guys, it's education. Education is what's wrong with the world today. Because if you were educated, you wouldn't be asking the question, what's wrong with the world today? You would all know. But no one's educated because education is the problem. So everyone's arguing about what they think the problem is, and no one can come up with any kind of an agreement because you lack education, because education is the problem. Education is the invisible catalyst of all of this. You fix education, the whole sequence is restored. And then everyone knows what is wrong with the world because they have problem solving and education and knowledge to fix it. Because it's not getting fixed, it's because there's no educators in the world today. That's the real truth of it. There's no educators in the world today. You are living in a delusion that you think there's educators when in fact there's not, which is why a lot of masters are now on YouTube teaching their own vocation because they know how bad it is out there. There's a lot of people like me who made it, and they got out and they went, wow, that was so fucking hard. I'm going to sit down and teach people the way of the world, the way of the earth, because there's nature here also. And then there's the self, and then there's others. Philosophy, when it's taught on the right sequence, is very, very, very different than what everybody else out there thinks it is. It's very different. So I studied Plato when I was a child without my sequence being disrupted. And as a result, I got a completely different interpretation. I got the interpretation that Plato meant it to have, which is why I say Plato taught me directly. It's because it literally passed right from him to me. And when I sat down and looked at everything else that had the sequence to it, it put everything in perspective. And I went, oh, look at that. There's a package here. And then there's the academic disciplines. But when the Roman Empire decided to revive the educational system that they destroyed 1,000 years after they destroyed it, they didn't know about the package. So they only had a handful of the academic disciplines. They didn't even have the full academic disciplines. So they only included about 6 of them. They cherry-picked a couple others and threw them in there, and then they banned a few others. And then they gave that to the people. They tampered with the academic disciplines. And Plato and me and Pythagoras and Zoroaster all going, oh my God, what the fuck are you doing to the sequence? But okay, that's the way it happened. So that when you finally got an educational system back by the people who destroyed it to begin with, it didn't make any sense and it's all over the place. And now you got a lot of teachers going, I don't know why you have to study this. You just do. It's your vocation, isn't it? You've studied it and you don't know what it does. Has anyone wondered why teachers don't even know what their own subject does? Like, come on. Meanwhile, when you studied the package, you understand what this is and how it fits into the big picture. Philosophers have the big picture. So as a result, they can walk into a classroom and say, so you want to study mathematics? Let me tell you what mathematics really is. It's shorthand for logic. But have you studied logic? Now, if you pick up a physics book, I have a physics book. I have many physics books. If you pick up this particular physics book, every chapter begins with, this is prerequisitional to this chapter, which means you skip this chapter and it's not going to make sense. Education is the same way. Everything is the same way. Everything is independent-dependent relationship, which you learn in physics, which you learn in philosophy, which you learn in math, which you learn in logic, which you learn in philosophy. It's in the package. You have to learn the sequence. And once you understand the relationship of independent to dependent, it gives you the ability to understand the relativity from point A to point B. Now you have the ability to measure. But also, you know that I can't study this without its foundation. So there's a lot of people going, I don't understand it. And I'm going, because you don't have the foundation. You're not going to understand B without A. You're not going to understand 5 unless you've studied 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're not going to be able to study physics unless you've accomplished everything that comes before physics. Everything is prerequisitional except love. Love is not. Love is the only thing that can out of nothing. Love is the beginning, guys. It's the beginning. So after you get this beautiful academic discipline together, And you start to dive into these. You don't want to dissect all of them. And this is where those vaunters called teachers got this wrong, is you don't want to dissect all 18 disciplines. What you want to do is you want to literally sample each one of them. You need to know what they do. You need to understand the surface level. So every one of these disciplines has 3 levels. It's like walking down a marketplace, and there's shops, and every shop has its own, like this is the English shop. Now there's going to be the storefront. That's your window shopping. You're going to have the store itself, but then there's going to have the back room. Now, you're not going to want to go into the back room of each and every one of these shops. Maybe you do. If you're a philosopher, this is exactly what you do. You literally go into the back room of every single shop, but you do it in the right sequence. So what you should be doing when you walk into kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, sixth grade, up to sixth grade. When you get to sixth grade, then it changes. So everything up to sixth grade should be you walking through all the storefronts and you looking at the storefronts of all the academic disciplines. You should have a salesman. This is the only time I'm ever going to say this line. You should have a salesman with each one of these buildings telling you how and what it does. But then you need the philosopher to explain. Now you need to understand what that is for this. So you've got the physicist who comes in and says, this is why you should study physics. And you've got the chemist going, this is why you should study chemist. But then it's the philosopher, biologist, going, now you need to understand exactly how chemistry is related to physics. You need to understand how music and art are related to physics. You need to know how theater and stage is related to music and art and physics and communications and logic and chemistry. And yes, theater and stage is related to chemistry. Philosophers know that. It's really important that you do too, that theater and stage is related to chemistry. Because every time a chemist stands on stage and says, I'm going to go ahead and give you my dissertation now, and I'm going to go ahead and read this in a monotone because I didn't study theater and stage. I hope you absorbed all that and you listened and understood it. And there's a good chance we didn't, because he didn't study theater and stage. This is why we study theater and stage. So we know how to deliver all of our awesome ideas no matter what vocation you decide to take on. So you can study mathematics, but are you going to be the mathematician who sits there and dryly reads garbage hoping that we'll be interested? Mathematicians would be interested, but there's a whole lot of other people going, wow, that sucks. Well, that's because they didn't study theater and stage. Right now, there is this woman on YouTube, and I love her to pieces. She studied theater and stage and physics. She's a physicist who studied theater and stage. So she's on a stage and she's doing weird shit. It's like Bill Nye, the science guy who studied theater and stage. He got it. He's a philosopher. He went, oh, I'm going to be a scientist, but if you want to make it interesting, you've got to do theater and stage because that's how people understand, with story. It's the story that gets people. So if you're going to be a chemist, well, great. Are you going to be a hermit? Because you got Mother Nature and 8 billion other people here. And that's really the question. Are you going to be a hermit? Because if you're going to be a chemist and you're going to be a hermit, you're fine. This doesn't include you. But if you don't want to be a hermit, how the hell are you going to tell everybody how awesome the stuff you have found is? Imagine CERN. CERN. They say CERN. The rest of the world says CERN. So CERN, we'll go with CERN. Is it CERN? I think it's CERN. I read books. I don't talk to people yet. So when you have a physicist in CERN and they come out, they've got to now deliver their awesome shit. Now they've got to make it interesting for you, but you only understand story. Guess what? The universal language in the world is not music. It's story, which is what philosophers know, is that story is the universal language. It's not music. It's not laughter, guys. It's story. It's the only language we all understand, which is why no matter what, we're telling story. Music is not the common denominator of all of this. Story is. The problem is if you don't know how to tell story, theater, stage, linguistics, logic, art, poetry, which is why Plato had nine epic poetry styles that you had to learn in his course. is because you're going to be delivering that shit to people, and you got to make it interesting. You got to tell the story of physics. So you've got to be a storyteller. No matter what vocation you choose, you're going to be a storyteller. So every one of us has to learn story. Oh, poor us. Poor us. How many $1 billion a year do we put into theater, stage, story? If we're not buying books and reading them, we're watching them on TV. Come on. What is the dollar amount for how much we invest in story? We are a little obsessed with story. Like obsessed. Because we're stories. We are sentient stories. Our lives are stories. It's the art and the science of story. It's all we do. By the way, this is philosophy. So when you're putting together all of this stuff and you're building it, it's the understanding of, all right, what's my story going to be? Congratulations, you're here. What's your story going to be? This is what day 1 of kindergarten should be. Welcome to kindergarten. You're here to learn your story. Do you have any idea what kind of a story you're going to enjoy? Let's get you inside your story. There are 18 disciplines on all the ways you can tell your story, but you got to know what the 18 disciplines are and how they interact in order for you to create your story so that you can communicate this with other people. Now, in order to do this properly, you've really got to know story. That's what we're going to do for the first 12 years of your life, is just teach you story. And while you're learning all the 12 stories, you're actually going to discover all of the science inside of that storytelling. So as you go through the progression of story, you find math, you find physics. So by the time you get over to chemistry, you're going, oh my God, I remember this back when I was doing art and painting and sculpting. And the physicists are all going, I remember this from music class. This is why I loved music so much. And all the mathematicians are sitting there reading books going, oh yeah, I see the mathematics that is inside every single book every time I look at a double negative. Like, this is math, people. This is the way of the world. So when you understand that art is just science in real life, and that in order to deliver it, it has to be done through story, which is what art is. It's the story of science. Take that down. Art is the story of science. That when you take out art, you take out the story, and now you've just got dry scientists. I love you guys, but you're dry. All sitting there dryly telling you about their discoveries without any story, and now you're going, I hate science. And it's because they've taken the story out of science when they took the art out of story. Art is the story of science. And if you don't know what science is, unless you're a scientist, you don't know what science is. You're not going to understand that you already are a scientist. It's just a really scary word because you don't know what it is, because the educational system has failed you. So, as a parent, you must understand that you have to have your child trained, but not all children are okay with a live trainer. Some of them just want the delivery boy. Can we just deliver the materials? So that's really the thing. This is where homeschooling starts. So you need to be trained. You're an explorer. You're looking for your story. We're going to give you relevant education, which means we don't want you learning from the egotistical, delusional fandom of teachers. Let's get you a real teacher. Let's get you a philosopher. Do you want a live trainer, or do you want the delivery boy to just drop off the supplies and then you figure it out for yourself? And your child is going to give you one of the answers. Some of them are going to say both. Some of them are going to say, I want a delivery boy. Just give me the supplies and leave me alone. All right. The other one's going to say, I would like a live trainer. Others are going to say, I need a hybrid. All right. That's fine. So the next thing is, you, the parent, needs to understand why we have education. The reason why you have education is so you, the self, knows how to interact and communicate and live with nature and everybody else. And when you get this balanced beautifully, we interact very well together. But if the educational system is shit, we don't interact well. We don't play nice. You play nice when you're educated on how to play nice. And because we're missing these 18 disciplines, and because we don't know how they all fit together, we don't know how we fit together. Because some of us are scientists, and some of us are art, and some of us are stories. And as a result, we don't know how to interconnect our pieces because our educators didn't tell us that part. because that's in the packaging. So when you decide to homeschool, this is really what you're doing, is you are delivering the package. You are studying the packaging. Now, this is not difficult. This is 12th grade material. This is very simple stuff. You just don't know about it. So you didn't know. Oh, so a teacher is supposed to be delivering the package. All right. Welcome to the package that is your educational system. You just need to know a little bit of information here. We're going to deliver the package, and then here's the academic discipline. This is how to use it, and then I'm going to leave, and you guys are on your own. Now, you can have trainers. You can have the delivery boy drop off the training equipment and briefly teach you how to do this, but you're pretty much on your own, as it should be, because this is an exploration of discovery, which means you really need to be out in your ship exploring the great wilderness of the self. That way you can figure out how we all fit together. And your child really needs to be looking for their passion, because their passion is the grounding rod that solidifies them so they can go, oh, this is where I am, and this is my language, and now this is how I can understand the world. So now everything in the world can be translated into this concept so I can now articulate it to other people. And that is what a passion is for. That is what your primary academic discipline passion does. It's the translator. It's so you can communicate with other people. It's not about making money. It has nothing to do with making money. It has everything to do with you being able to communicate to other people so you can make money somewhere else. You are not going through an educational system to get a job or make money. You are going through an educational system so you know which language you can speak so you can communicate to other people. This is who I am, this is what I am, and this is what I do. And had you developed that, you'd be fine right now. But our communication was taken away from us when they said, oh, you can't study art because there's no science in that. You don't need an imagination. Let's throw that. Thank you, vaunters. I'm so glad we have those people telling us how to think and live and be. And so when you take on the concept of homeschooling, and really parents are the leading force here, this whole thing is up to them. Like, parents have all of the influence here. And the problem is parents have no education because they got their education from vaunting school. And as a result, they don't know what they're dealing with. So this is where we step in and we give you the packaging that teaches you what they should have learned, what you should have learned, what they should have taught you, what they should have learned. That way you can understand it, translate it, get the big picture and go, oh, so this is what education is for. Yeah, it's literally communication. It's the next stage of communication. And the fact that we know so little about communication, linguistics, all of this you learn in philosophy, suddenly you understand how everything interacts with each other because there's a package here. The problem is our current educational system doesn't have the package, so they don't understand any of it. They just got it's like there was a shipwreck and somebody found a box of supplies, but the manual was lost at sea. Plato, we're born with the manual. We're born with the manual, but people are removing the manual from your brain. So if you get the supply kit, you don't know how to use it. And that's exactly what's going on, is teachers and everybody has gotten the supply kit. You were born with the manual, but the manual was taken away from you. It was not taken away from me. And that's the difference. I never lost the manual. So I was able to figure all this shit out and put it back together again, assemble it and go, whoa, Plato, do you see this? And Plato's like, yes, we kind of invent. Yeah, we got it from Pythagorean, and he got it from Zoroaster, and he got it from King Solomon. You're late to the party, Anna. I know, but this is cool. So we had that conversation. And when you have it all together, it tells a completely different story. So you just need the manual and you need the package. It's really simple stuff, like 12-year-old stuff, as in 12th grade, 6th graders. This is a Radical Global Healing Plan. It's available on my website. It's a free course that corresponds with my read-alongs, which are on Kindle Vella. So thank you so much. The link and everything is down below in the video description. Thank you, and may the kindest of words always find you.